A waitress was down to his last $17 for her son's birthday. Then 200 Hells Angels did the unthinkable. The back room of Rosie's diner smelled like grease and old coffee. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting yellow light on stacks of napkins and boxes of sugar packets. Sarah sat on a milk crate, her back against the wall, and counted the crumpled bills in her hand for the third time. $17. That was it. That was everything she had in the world. She pressed her lips together and blinked hard, but the tears came anyway. Slow and hot, they rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto the bills. She didn't wipe them away. No one could see her back here. No one would know. The photo in her other hand was worn at the edges. She had carried it so many times that little Leo's face had faded in places. But his smile was still bright. His eyes still held the whole world. "Hey, baby," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's your birthday tomorrow. You're turning 5. She traced his cheek with her thumb. "I know I promised you a party. I promised you a cake with blue frosting and 5 candles. I promised you that present you've been asking for. That toy truck with the red wheels. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today." Now back to the story. Her throat closed up. "Mommy's gonna find a way. I don't know how yet. But I will. I always do, right?" The words hung in the air, empty as her pockets. $17 could buy a cake. Maybe. A small one from the grocery store with the clearance sticker on it. But then there'd be nothing left for gas. Nothing for milk. Nothing for the medicine Leo needed when his asthma acted up, the inhaler that the pharmacy said was ready for pickup, the one her insurance lapsed before she could get it. She looked at the bills again. 12 ones. 1 5. The corners were folded and soft. "Happy birthday, my sweet boy," she said, kissing the photo. "I love you more than anything in this whole wide world." She heard a bell ring from the front of the diner. A customer. She shoved the money into her apron pocket, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and took a deep breath. The regulars came late on Fridays, club members from the VFW hall down the street. Truckers passing through. People who needed a hot meal and a smile. Sarah knew how to smile. She had been doing it for years. She pushed through the swinging door and stepped into the dining room. The fluorescent lights flickered for a second before settling into a steady hum. Booths lined the windows, their red vinyl cracked and patched with duct tape. The air smelled like onions and burnt toast and the faint sweet note of apple pie from the display case. And there, at the counter, sat an old man. She had never seen him before. He wore a flannel jacket that had seen better days, its elbows worn thin and frayed. His boots were scuffed, the leather cracked and dry. His gray hair stuck out in wild tufts from under a faded cap, and his face was a map of wrinkles and road lines, as if he had spent his whole life looking into the sun. But what caught Sarah's attention was what he was doing. He had a small pile of coins on the counter in front of him. Nickels and dimes and pennies, arranged in neat stacks. He counted them slowly, deliberately, moving each coin from one pile to another with a gnarled finger. His lips moved silently as he added them up in his head. Sarah stepped closer. She saw his hand tremble just a little. She saw the way he kept his eyes down. Embarrassed. "Can I get you something, sir?" she asked softly. The old man looked up. His eyes were watery and tired, but there was something warm behind them. Kind, gentle, a man who had seen a lot of life, and not all of it had been good. He gave her a small, apologetic smile. Well, now I was hoping to get a cup of coffee, he said, his voice rusty. But I'm not sure I have enough. He pushed his coins together with a cupped hand. Tell me, young lady, what does a cup of coffee cost these days? Big Jim looked at his coins again. He counted them one more time, as if the numbers might change if he tried hard enough. 68 cents, he said. I thought coffee was about that. Guess I haven't been in a diner in a while. Sarah's heart sank. A cup of coffee at Rosie's cost $2.15. She opened her mouth to speak, but the old man was already gathering his coins with shaky hands. That's all right, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I shouldn't be spending money on coffee anyway. You have a good night, young lady. He slid off the stool. His knees cracked as he stood. He moved slowly, like every step cost him something. He tipped his cap to her and started walking toward the door. Sarah watched him go. She saw the way his shoulders hunched forward, the way his hand lingered on the door handle for a moment too long. The way his whole body seemed to say, I'm used to this. I'm used to being hungry. I'm used to walking away. And then she saw his eyes. He turned back just once, giving her a final polite nod. And in that brief second, she saw it. The hopelessness. The deep, tired ache of a man who had stopped expecting good things to happen to him. The quiet shame of someone who had once been somebody and now couldn't afford a cup of coffee. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. She thought about the $17 in her apron. She thought about Leo's birthday. She thought about the cake and the toy truck and the way her son's face would light up when he saw them. And then she thought about this old man. This stranger. This human being who was about to walk out into the cold night with nothing in his belly. Sir, she called out. Wait. He stopped and turned. Sarah reached into her apron and pulled out the crumpled bills. She peeled off a 10, the biggest bill she had, the one that was supposed to help make Leo's birthday happen. Her hand trembled just a little as she slid it across the counter. Please, she said. Stay, let me get you something to eat. His eyes went wide. Young lady, I can't take your money. I don't even know you. You don't have to know me, she said softly. And then, because she couldn't think of anything else to say, she added, I know what it's like to go to bed hungry. Please, let me do this. The old man stared at her. His jaw worked. He blinked a few times, and Sarah saw something shine in his eyes. But he did not argue. He walked back to the stool and sat down slowly, like he was afraid the kindness might disappear if he moved too fast. Sarah wrote up the ticket herself. A hot roast beef dinner with mashed potatoes and gravy. A slice of apple pie on the side. A cup of coffee, black, with an extra spoonful of sugar because she didn't think anyone should have to drink bitter coffee on an empty stomach. She brought it all out on a tray. The steam rose from the plate, carrying the rich smell of gravy and warm bread. She set it down in front of him with a napkin and a fork. There you go, she said. Big Jim looked at the plate. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he picked up the fork, and his hand shook as he took the first bite. Sarah busied herself wiping down the counter. She didn't want to watch. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed, but from the corner of her eye, she saw him eat, slowly at first, then faster. Like the food was warming something inside him that had been cold for a very long time. He cleaned the plate, every last bite. He used a piece of bread to sop up the gravy, and then he sat back, looking at the empty plate with wonder. There's pie too, Sarah said softly, pushing the plate toward him. Big Jim shook his head. I can't. I shouldn't. It's already paid for. Please, enjoy it. He picked up the fork again. The first bite of apple pie made him close his eyes. And then the tears came. Not many, just a few, slipping down the deep lines of his face and disappearing into his gray beard. He set the fork down and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. You're a rare soul, girl, he said, his voice rough. I've been walking this earth for a long time. I've met kings, and I've met thieves. And I can tell you, kindness like yours doesn't come around very often. Sarah smiled. It was a weak, thin smile, and it didn't reach her eyes. She was thinking about the $10 gone. The birthday cake reduced to a cheap box of cupcakes. The toy truck still sitting on the shelf at the store, waiting for someone who could afford it. Her heart ached. Thank you, Big Jim said. He stood and clasped her hand in both of his. His were calloused and warm. You gave an old man more than a meal tonight. You gave him hope. He tipped his cap and walked out the door. Sarah stood alone in the quiet diner. The bell jangled. The air was still. And she was left with an empty plate, a heart full of sorrow, and a son whose birthday she could no longer afford. Let me continue the story from where it left off. I need to write Chapter 3, The Wolf Watches. The scene needs to. 1. Start with Wolf watching the exchange from his booth 2. He sees Sarah's act of kindness and her tears when she thinks no one is looking. 3. He waits until the diner clears out. 4. Then approaches Sarah and asks why she gave her last dollars to a stranger. 5. Sarah breaks down and tells him about Leo's birthday and her empty wallet. I need to write about 700 words in the style established. Clear. Simple language. Heartwarming. Showing, not telling. No M-dashes or hyphens, no foreshadowing or ending beyond what's instructed. Wolf sat in his usual booth, the one in the corner, with a clear view of the whole diner. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. He didn't mind. He had watched the old man count his pennies. He had watched Sarah slide that $10 bill across the counter. He had watched the stranger eat like a man starving, and he had watched the young waitress wipe down the same spot on the counter for a long time, her shoulders tight, her face turned away. She thought no one was looking. But Wolf always looked. He was a big man, 45 years old, with a graying beard and arms thick from years of turning wrenches and holding on to handlebars. His leather vest was worn soft in places, and the patches on his back told a story that most people were smart enough not to ask about. He had seen a lot in his life. He had seen hunger. He had seen fear. He had seen people break in ways that left permanent cracks. But he had not seen what Sarah did tonight. She gave away her last bit of money to a total stranger. No questions. No conditions. Just pure, simple kindness. And then she stood there, pretending to be busy, while her eyes went red and her hands shook. Wolf stayed until the diner emptied out. The last customer left at 10:15. The busboy disappeared into the kitchen. The cook called out that he was heading home. Sarah did not call out to stop him. She just waved. The diner was quiet now. Just the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights. Wolf stood up from his booth. His boots made a heavy sound on the tile floor as he walked to the counter. He set down his empty cup and slid onto a stool. Sarah was drying a glass with a rag. She looked up. For a second, there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. He had seen that flicker 100 times before. People saw his size, his beard, his vest, and they assumed the worst. but she held his gaze. "You need a refill?" she asked. "No," Wolf said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel under a heavy boot. "I need to ask you something." Sarah set the glass down. She folded the rag and placed it neatly on the counter. "What's that?" Wolf leaned forward just a little. Not threatening, just close enough that he could see the tired lines around her eyes. "Why did you do that tonight?" Sarah blinked. "Do what?" The old man. "Big Jim. You gave him your last $10. I saw you pull it from your apron. I saw the way your hand shook. That wasn't money you could spare." Sarah dropped her eyes. She picked at the edge of the rag, folding it and unfolding it. "He was hungry," she said quietly. "He couldn't afford a cup of coffee. I couldn't just let him walk out into the cold like that." Wolf didn't say anything. He waited, and the silence was kinder than words. It gave Sarah room. It gave her space to feel the weight of the night pressing down on her. And then the wall she had been holding up all day crumbled. Her chin wobbled. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold it in. But the tears came anyway. They rolled down her cheeks, one after another, and she wiped at them with the back of her hand like she was ashamed. "Tomorrow is my son's birthday," she said, her voice cracking. "He's turning 5. And I had $17. That was supposed to be for cake. For a gift. For something. Anything. And I gave 10 of it to a man I never met." Wolf stayed still. "Now I have $7 to my name," Sarah went on. $7 and a son who deserves the whole world, and I can't even give him a birthday." She let out a broken laugh, bitter and small. "And the worst part? I don't regret it. That old man needed that meal more than I needed that money. But I don't know what I'm going to tell Leo tomorrow morning. I don't know how I'm going to look at his face and tell him there's no cake. No party. No gift. Just another day, same as every other day." She pressed her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Wolf watched her. He did not speak. He did not reach out. He let the tears come, because he knew that some storms had to pass through before the sky could clear. Then, he reached into the pocket of his leather vest. He pulled out his wallet. It was old, cracked leather, held together with tape. He opened it and took out a thick fold of bills. He set them on the counter and slid them toward her, slow and gentle. "Go home," he said. His voice was softer now. "Give your son the best birthday he's ever had." Sarah stared at the money. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Wolf stood up. He put his wallet away and buttoned his vest. He looked down at her, and in his eyes there was something deep and old, something that almost looked like hope. "It's not charity," he said quietly. "It's what people do for each other. Good people, the kind who give away their last $10 to a stranger." Wolf stood there, looking down at Sarah. The money sat on the counter between them. A thick fold of bills that seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. Sarah's hands hovered over it. She did not touch it. She could not. "Please," she managed. "I can't. This is too much." Wolf shook his head. He said very little. That was his way. Words were heavy for him, like tools he only pulled out when the job was serious. So he just nodded once, slow and firm, the way a man does when he has made up his mind and there is no changing it. Then he reached into his vest pocket again. He pulled out a $20 bill, crisp and clean, and laid it flat on the table next to the fold of cash. "That's your tip," he said. Sarah stared at it. In all the months Wolf had been coming to the diner, He had never left more than $2. Some nights he left nothing at all. But he always drank his coffee slowly, always sat in the same booth, always nodded at her when she filled his cup. He was a regular, a quiet one, a man of few words and long silences. A $20 tip. From Wolf. Sarah did not know what to say. Her throat felt tight. Her hands were shaking again. Wolf turned to leave. His boots echoed on the tile floor, each step heavy and deliberate. He was halfway to the door when he stopped. He looked back over his shoulder. His eyes found hers, steady and sure. "Tomorrow," he said. "You come to work. Trust me." Sarah blinked. "What?" But he did not explain. He just gave her that same slow nod, pulled the door open, and stepped out into the cold night air. The bell above the door chimed once. Then the door swung shut. Through the glass, Sarah watched him walk to his motorcycle. The engine rumbled to life. The headlight cut a bright path through the dark. And then he was gone. Sarah stood alone in the quiet diner. She counted the money on the counter. Then she counted it again. Her hands trembled as she folded the bills and tucked them into her apron pocket. She told herself she would pay him back. Somehow, someday. The walk home was long and cold. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders and kept her head down against the wind. The streetlights cast yellow pools on the sidewalk. Above her, the moon hung low and pale, hidden behind a veil of clouds. When she opened the door to her small apartment, the warmth hit her face like a soft hand. The place was tiny. 2 rooms. A kitchen no bigger than a closet. Cracks in the ceiling that she could not afford to fix. But it was clean. It was safe. And in the corner, under a faded blue blanket, her whole world was sleeping. Leo. Sarah tiptoed across the floor. She knelt beside his bed and watched him breathe. His little chest rose and fell, slow and peaceful. His dark lashes fanned against his round cheeks. One small hand was curled under his chin, holding the corner of his blanket. He looked so small, so fragile, so full of a trust she was terrified she did not deserve. Tomorrow, he would be 5. Tomorrow she would somehow find a way to give him something. Tonight she let herself break. She leaned down and wrapped her arms around his sleeping body. She pressed her face into the softness of his hair, which smelled like soap and the faint sweetness of the cheap shampoo she bought at the dollar store. She held him gently, careful not to wake him, and she cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that soaked into his pillowcase. Her shoulders shook. Her breath came out in ragged little bursts. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered against his hair. "Mama is so sorry. But I'm going to figure it out. I don't know how yet. But I'm going to figure it out." Leo stirred in his sleep. He made a small sound, like a kitten. Then his little hand found her arm and patted it, a sleepy, automatic gesture. A child's way of saying, "It's okay. I'm here." Sarah held him tighter. She thought about the money in her apron pocket. She thought about the $20 tip. She thought about Wolf's words, low and rough and certain. "Tomorrow, you come to work. Trust me." She did not know what he meant. She did not know why an old biker with a graying beard would care about her son's birthday, or her empty wallet, or her broken heart. But for the first time all night, the knot in her chest loosened a little. She stayed there, kneeling beside the bed, holding her son. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. The heat rattled through the old pipes. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling like a quick, silent promise. Tomorrow, something was going to change. Sarah just did not know it yet. The alarm clock screamed at 6:30 a.m. Sarah's eyes flew open. Her heart pounded before her brain even caught up with where she was. Leo's birthday. She rolled over and looked at the small pile of clothes folded on the chair across the room. The same clothes she'd worn every day for the past week. The same thin jacket, the same worn shoes. She had 20 minutes to get ready before her shift started. Leo was still asleep, curled up in a little ball under his blue blanket. His lips were parted. His breath came out in soft, even puffs. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. She almost didn't want to wake him. But she had to. "Hey, birthday boy," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "Time to get up." Leo's eyes fluttered open. He blinked at her, confused for a moment. Then his face split into a huge grin. "Mama, I'm 5. Sarah's heart squeezed. "Yes, baby, you're 5. She helped him get dressed. The only clean shirt he had was a faded red one with a small tear at the sleeve. She'd mended it the best she could. He didn't seem to care. He hopped off the bed and ran to the tiny kitchen, where she poured him a bowl of cheap cereal with milk that was almost at its expiration date. He ate like he was having a feast. Sarah's hands shook as she poured herself a cup of coffee. She could not afford to buy him a cake. She could not afford a gift. She had a few dollars left, and she was going to have to spend them on bus fare and lunch. She looked at the calendar on the wall, a picture of a mountain lake, torn from an old magazine. Her finger traced the date. March 14th. 5 years ago today, she had held Leo for the first time. He had been so small, so perfect. Tommy had cried. A big, tough biker crying like a baby. He'd held Leo against his chest and promised him the world. Tommy had kept that promise for 3 short years. Sarah blinked back the tears. She could not cry in front of Leo. Not today. Today she had to be strong. "Come on, birthday boy," she said, forcing a smile. "I have to go to work. But tonight, we'll do something special." "What are we doing, Mama?" Sarah's throat tightened. She had no plan. She had no idea what she was going to do. But she looked into his big brown eyes, full of trust and hope, and she said the only thing she could. Something wonderful. The walk to the diner felt longer than usual. The morning air was cold and sharp. Leo held her hand and skipped beside her. He did not complain. He never did. When they reached the diner, Sarah stopped. The parking lot was full. Every single parking space was occupied by a motorcycle. Huge, gleaming machines in rows and rows. Chrome shining in the early morning light. Leather seats. Painted tanks. Some with flags. Some with skulls. Sarah's breath caught. "What is it, Mama?" Leo asked, tugging her hand. "Are those bikes?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. "Those are bikes." She pulled the door open. The diner was packed. 200 men and women fill every booth, every seat at the counter, every spare inch of standing space. They wore full leather cuts covered in patches. Colors, names, emblems she didn't recognize. They were big. They were rough. Some had beards that reached their chests. Others wore bandanas and dark glasses. And they were all silent. Every single one of them turned to look at her. Sarah's legs almost gave out. Her heart hammered. She held Leo's hand so tight her knuckles went white. She thought about turning around and running. She thought about calling the police. Then she saw Wolf. He sat at his usual booth, near the back. His coffee cup was in his hands. His beard was trimmed. His eyes were steady and calm, watching her with that same quiet warmth she had seen last night. He stood up. The men and women at the tables moved to let him pass. The room was so quiet she could hear her own breath. Wolf walked toward her. His boots made soft sounds on the tile floor. When he reached her, he stopped. He looked down at Leo, and his hard face softened. Then, he looked at Sarah. "You came," he said. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this?" Wolf didn't answer right away. He reached out, and with a gentleness that seemed impossible for his size, he touched Leo's shoulder. "Happy birthday, little man." Leo's face lit up. "You know my birthday?" Wolf smiled. It was a small smile, a crack in a stone wall. "We all know your birthday." He pointed to the counter. Sarah turned. There, on the counter next to the register, was a huge glass jar. The kind they used to drain the coffee machine. It was about 2 feet tall, wide and round. And it was stuffed full of cash. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars. 20s, 50s, hundreds. Some bills were folded tight. Some were loose. They filled the jar almost to the top, a mountain of green that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Sarah's mouth fell open. "We heard what you did last night," Wolf said. "Behind this diner. We heard what you did for my father." Sarah shook her head. She could not process it. "Your father?" Wolf nodded. "Big Jim. The old man you fed, the one who couldn't afford a cup of coffee." Sarah's knees went weak. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "He's your father?" "He's a founding member of this club," Wolf said. "He called me last night." Had tears in his voice. Said a young woman with kind eyes spent her last $10 to feed him. Said she had a little boy turning 5 today and nothing to give him. Wolf stepped closer. His voice dropped, low and rough and full of something she had never heard from him before. Something gentle. "That's what family does, Sarah. You fed my old man when you had nothing. So today, 200 of us are feeding you." He gestured to the jar. "Happy birthday to your boy, Sarah. We heard what you did for my father." Sarah could not move. Her feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. The first biker stood up. He was a giant of a man, with arms like tree trunks and a gray beard that hung to his belt. He walked to the jar, pulled out a thick roll of bills from his vest, and dropped them in. Then he turned to Sarah and nodded once. A slow, respectful nod, the kind you give to someone you honor. Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came out. The next rider followed, a woman this time, with silver earrings and a leather vest covered in patches. She smiled at Sarah, soft and warm, and dropped in a stack of 20s. Then she walked back to her seat. One by one, they came. Each Hell's Angel rose from their booth or their stool. Each one walked to the counter. Each one reached into their pocket or their vest and pulled out money. Sometimes a few bills. Sometimes a thick fold. And each one dropped it into the jar with a soft thump that seemed to echo through the silent diner. Then they turned to Sarah. And they nodded. Not a single word, just a nod. A look, a shared understanding that passed between strangers who had suddenly become something more. Sarah's chest ached. Her eyes burned. She felt a hot tear slide down her cheek, then another. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming. She could not stop them. Leo tugged at her hand. "Mama? Why is everyone putting money in the jar?" Sarah knelt down. Her voice was shaky. "They're giving us a gift, baby. Why?" She looked up. Wolf was watching her, his arms crossed over his chest. There was something in his eyes, something that looked like pride. "Because they're kind," she whispered. The line kept moving. A man with a bald head and a gold earring dropped in a wad of hundreds. A woman with a sunflower tattoo on her forearm dropped in a check. An old man with a cane, who looked like he might be 70 if he was a day, slowly made his way to the jar and placed a single folded 50 inside. He reached out and patted Sarah's hand. "Tommy was a good man," he said. "We don't forget." Sarah's breath caught. She wanted to ask how he knew Tommy. She wanted to ask 100 questions. But the old man just smiled and walked away. The jar was nearly full now. Bills poked out of the top. A few flopped over the rim. The glass gleamed under the lights, and the money inside made a solid wall of green. Sarah watched the last rider approach. He was smaller than the others, lean and quiet. He had not spoken the whole time. He walked to the jar and slid in a thick envelope. The kind of envelope you use for important papers. It was stuffed so full it barely fit through the opening. He had to push it down gently with 2 fingers. When he was done, he looked at Sarah. He placed his hand over his heart, then pointed at Leo. Then he left. The diner slowly emptied. The bikers filed out in pairs and groups. They did not rush. Some patted Leo's head on the way out. Some clasped Sarah's shoulder. A few said nothing at all, just nodded one last time and walked into the morning light. Sarah stood in the middle of the room. The door swung shut. The last motorcycle engine roared to life outside, then faded down the street. Wolf walked over to her. He pulled a clean white towel from his back pocket, the kind they used to wipe down tables, and handed it to her. "You're leaking," he said. Sarah let out a broken laugh. She pressed the towel to her face and took a shaky breath. Wolf looked down at Leo. "You like motorcycles, little man?" Leo nodded so hard his whole body shook. "I love them." Wolf crouched down. His big frame filled the space in front of Leo. He spoke gently, like a man who had done this before. "How would you like to ride one?" Leo's eyes went wide. "Really? For real? For real?" Wolf stood up and looked at Sarah. "Now you go take the day off. We've got a party to plan." Sarah's mouth opened. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say she could not afford a party. She wanted to say she had to work. But the words died in her throat. She looked at the jar, overflowing with green. Then she looked at the envelope. It sat near the top, thick and heavy. Written on the front in neat black handwriting was a single name. Tommy. The diner felt strange now. Quiet in a way it had never been quiet before. The morning light spilled through the front windows, casting long shadows across the empty booths. The coffee machine gurgled softly in the corner. A single fly buzzed against the glass. Sarah stood by the counter with the envelope in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. The name Tommy was written in neat black ink. She traced the letters with her thumb. Leo pressed against her leg. "Mama, what's that?" "I don't know, baby." Her voice was barely a whisper. "But it has your daddy's name on it." She opened it slowly. The flap was old and worn, creased from years of being folded and unfolded. Inside, there was a photograph. It was yellowed at the edges. The corners were bent. The colors had faded into a soft, warm brown. But the face in the picture was as clear as yesterday. Tommy. He was younger. His hair was longer, and his smile was wide and bright. He wore a leather vest covered in patches, and his arm was slung around the shoulder of a man beside him. That man was Wolf, younger, leaner, with less gray in his beard, but the same steady eyes, the same quiet strength. They stood in front of a line of motorcycles. The sun was behind them. They looked happy. They looked like brothers. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. A sob broke from her chest. "Tommy," she whispered. "Oh, Tommy." She held the photograph like it was made of glass, like it might crumble if she pressed too hard. She traced her thumb over his face, over the curve of his smile, over the eyes she had not seen in 2 years. Wolf stepped closer. His boots made soft sounds on the tile floor. He stopped beside her and looked down at the picture. "He was my brother," Wolf said. Sarah looked up. Her eyes were wet. "You knew him? I knew him better than I knew my own self." Wolf's voice was low and rough. "He saved my life. I never told you that. I should have. But I could not find the words." Sarah shook her head. She did not understand. None of this made sense. "Last night," Wolf said, "that old man you bought dinner for. The one with the pennies. Do you remember him?" Sarah nodded. She saw him clearly in her mind. The sagging jacket, the shaking hands, the way he counted his coins so carefully. "That was my father," Wolf said. "Big Jim. He founded this chapter 50 years ago. He's old and proud and would rather freeze than ask for a handout. He was out there counting pennies because he refuses to take a cent from me." Sarah's breath caught. "I did not know." "That's what I mean." Wolf's eyes were dark with emotion. "You did not know who he was. You had $17 to your name. You were crying in the back room because you could not buy your son a birthday cake, and still, when you saw an old man in need, you gave him $10 of your last 17 and bought him a hot meal." Wolf paused. He looked at the photograph in Sarah's hands. "What you did for Jim made us all want to be your family." Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came. She looked down at the picture again. Tommy's smile seemed to warm the room. "That old man you fed?" Wolf said softly. "That's Big Jim, my father, the founder of this chapter. And your husband, Tommy? He was my brother. What you did for Jim made us all want to be your family." Sarah pressed the photograph to her chest. A tear slipped down her cheek. She felt something shift inside her, something she could not name. Gratitude, grief, love. It all swirled together like cream in coffee. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Wolf nodded. He looked at her, and his face was open, honest, raw. There was no mask, no distance, no hard edge. Just a man who had carried a burden for a long time. And then his eyes changed. The softness faded. A shadow passed over his face, like a cloud covering the sun. His jaw tightened, his shoulders squared. Sarah felt the shift. She felt it in her bones, like the first rumble of thunder before a storm. "There's something else you need to know," Wolf said. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Sarah felt Leo squeeze her hand. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Wolf looked at Leo. Then he looked back at Sarah. His eyes held hers, and there was a weight in them she had never seen before. "Your son is in danger." Sarah's legs gave out. She stumbled backward until her knees hit the booth seat, and she collapsed into it like a rag doll. The photograph slipped from her fingers and landed face up on the table. Tommy's smile stared at the ceiling. Leo climbed onto the seat beside her. "Mama, are you okay?" Sarah could not answer. Her throat was closed. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. Wolf pulled out the chair across from her. He sat down slowly, like a man who had carried a heavy load for too long. He folded his hands on the table. His knuckles were scarred. His rings glinted in the morning light. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear it all the way through." Sarah nodded. She did not trust her voice. Wolf took a breath. He looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he began. "2 years ago, your husband and I were riding back from a meetup across the state line. It was late. The roads were empty. We were just two brothers talking about nothing, about bikes, about music, about the future." Wolf paused. He rubbed his thumb over a scar on his hand. Then the lights came. 3 trucks blocked the road ahead of us. Men poured out with bats and chains. It was Victor. He and I had history going back years. He wanted me dead, and he had set a trap. Sarah's hand moved to her chest. She could feel her heart beating through her shirt. Tommy saw it first. He yelled for me to turn around, but it was too late. They had blocked the road behind us, too. We were trapped. Wolf's voice grew rougher. He looked down at the table. "We fought. I will not pretend we fought clean. We did what we had to do. But there were too many of them. I went down. I remember the gravel digging into my back. I remember seeing Victor raise a gun. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I die." Wolf stopped. He was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he might not continue. Then he looked up at her. His eyes were wet. Tommy jumped in front of me. He did not hesitate. He did not think. He just moved. He took the bullet that was meant for me. Sarah let out a sound. It was small and broken, like a wounded bird. She pressed her hand to her mouth. "Tommy pushed me out of the way," Wolf said. "He saved my life, and he gave me his last words. He said, 'Take care of them.' He meant you, and he meant Leo." A tear fell down Sarah's cheek. Then another. She could not stop them. "I held him while he died," Wolf said. "I promised him I would watch over his family. I have been keeping that promise ever since. I paid your rent when you could not. I kept the diner owner from firing you when you fell behind. I was always close. You just never saw me." Sarah shook her head. "I never knew. I never knew any of this. I did not want you to know," Wolf said. "I did not want you to feel like a charity case. I just wanted you to be safe, to have a chance, to give Leo the life Tommy would have wanted for him." Sarah looked at the photograph again. Tommy's smile seemed to shine even brighter now. She understood him more than she ever had. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything, for all of it." Wolf nodded. But his face did not soften. If anything, it grew harder. "The man who set up that ambush," Wolf said. "His name is Victor. He was arrested a month after Tommy died. We made sure of it. But he was just released from prison last week." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She pulled Leo closer. "He has sworn revenge on me," Wolf said. "And he knows I love you. He knows I have been protecting you. He knows that hurting you and Leo is the one thing that would break me." Wolf leaned forward. His voice was low and steady. "I've been watching over you and Leo ever since. I paid your rent and kept this diner from firing you. But now, the man who set up that ambush is out of prison. He wants revenge on me, and he will hurt anyone I love." Sarah's world went silent. The only sound was Leo's small voice, asking, "Mama, what does that mean?" She pulled him into her arms. She held him tight. And for the first time in a long time, she did not know what to say. The diner felt like a different place after Wolf's words. The morning light that had seemed so warm now felt thin and cold. Sarah could not stop shaking. She held Leo against her chest, her fingers pressed into the back of his little shirt as if she could keep him safe just by holding on. Wolf stood up and pulled out his phone. He did not speak to Sarah. He just started pressing buttons, talking in a low voice to someone on the other end. "Yeah, it's me. I need the full rotation. Starting now. Leo, age 5. Kindergarten on Maple. I want 2 men at the school before the morning bell. 2 at the diner. 2 on Sarah's street. Tell them to be invisible, but be there." He paused, listening. Then he said, "I don't care what it costs. Do it." Sarah watched him. She had never seen him like this. He was not the kind man who had left the huge tip. He was a general. A guardian. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the windows, the door, every corner of the room. When he hung up, he turned to her. "You need to call the school. Tell them Leo stays inside today. Use whatever excuse you want. But he does not leave the building until one of my brothers picks him up." Sarah fumbled for her phone. Her hands were clumsy. She dialed the number for Maple Street Kindergarten, and when the secretary answered, her voice came out in a rush. "This is Sarah Miller, Leo's mother. I need to tell you something. Leo is to stay inside today. No recess outside. No walking to the pickup line. Somebody needs to bring him to the office and keep him there until I arrive." The secretary asked if something was wrong. Sarah looked at Wolf. He gave her a small nod. "Family emergency," Sarah said. "Please, just keep him inside." After she hung up, Wolf pulled out a second phone from his pocket. It was a simple black phone, small and unmarked. He slid it across the table toward her. "This is yours," he said. "It has 1 number in it. Mine, it works anywhere. It has a GPS tracker so I always know where you are. You do not go anywhere without it. You do not turn it off. You do not leave it in your car." Sarah picked it up. It was light and cold in her hand. "Press the button on the side for 3 seconds, Wolf said. That sends an alert to the whole chapter. Every rider within 10 miles drops what they are doing and comes to you. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded. She slipped the phone into her apron pocket. "I need to leave," she said. "I need to see Leo. I need to see him right now." Wolf stood. "I'll drive you, but not in my bike. I have a truck outside. We'll take that." Sarah grabbed her jacket. She looked at the photograph of Tommy one more time. His smile had not changed. But now she understood what that smile had cost. She tucked the photograph into her pocket. The truck ride was short, but it felt like hours. Sarah sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap. She could see Wolf's knuckles gripping the steering wheel. His jaw was tight. They pulled up to Maple Street Kindergarten. The building was a low brick school with a small playground out front. The fence around the playground was tall and made of green metal links. Through the fence, Sarah could see small figures in bright jackets running and laughing. She spotted Leo immediately. He was sitting on a wooden bench near the classroom door, not playing. A teacher sat beside him. He looked small. He looked confused. Sarah's heart squeezed. She got out of the truck and walked to the fence. Leo looked up and saw her. His face broke into a wide smile. He jumped off the bench and ran to her, pressing his fingers through the holes in the fence. "Mama," he shouted. "Look, I get to stay inside today." The teacher said it's a secret mission. Sarah laughed. It came out wet and broken. She pressed her hands against the fence, matching his fingers. "That's right, baby," she said. "It's a secret mission. And I'm your partner." Leo giggled. He did not know how scared she was. She hoped he would never know. Behind her, Wolf stood by the truck, scanning the street. His eyes moved from car to car, from window to window. Sarah looked down the block. A delivery van was parked at the corner. A woman with a stroller was walking past. A man was sitting on a bench across the street, reading a newspaper. She tried to breathe. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. But she could not shake the feeling that someone was watching. She held Leo's fingers through the fence and whispered, "Mama's not going anywhere, baby. I promise." And somewhere behind her, in the quiet of the street, she heard a distant engine start. That evening, Sarah drove to the motorcycle garage. Wolf had given her the address on a scrap of paper. The garage sat at the end of a quiet street, a big metal building with roll-up doors and a faded sign that read Miller's Auto and Cycle. Sarah noticed the name and felt a lump in her throat. Tommy's last name. Tommy's family. Wolf met her at the door. He wore his leather vest and jeans, and he looked tired, but his eyes were kind. He led her inside. The garage was huge and clean. The floors were swept. Tools hung in neat rows on the walls, and everywhere, in every corner, stood motorcycles. Gleaming chrome. Polished leather seats. Bright paint and dark metal. Sarah counted at least 40 bikes, and many of them had riders nearby, leaning against them, talking in low voices. They all stopped when she walked in. Every single one of them turned to look at her. Then, one by one, they nodded. Some touched their chests. Others just smiled. It was not a scary welcome. It was a warm one. Wolf walked her to the center of the garage. A long table stood there, covered with papers and cups of coffee. Someone had set out a plate of sandwiches, but nobody was eating. "I want you to meet some people," Wolf said. He gestured to a group of riders who stepped forward. "This is Bones. This is Hawk. This is Diesel. They are my brothers. They will be Leo's shadows from now on." Bones was a tall man with silver hair and a kind face. He knelt down to Sarah's level and said, "I have 3 daughters, ma'am. I know how to be careful with little ones." Hawk was younger, with a red beard and bright eyes. He said, "I used to be a teacher. I can help with homework." Diesel was big, with shoulders like a door. He did not say much. He just nodded and said, "I will protect him with my life." Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. She blinked them away. "Come," Wolf said. He led her through the garage to a back room. The room had a large table covered with maps and papers. A whiteboard stood on the wall, covered in names and arrows and lines. Wolf closed the door. The noise of the garage faded. "Sarah," he said, "we are going to give Leo the best birthday he has ever had, bigger than any child could dream of. Helicopter rides, a mountain of gifts, 200 riders singing to him. But first, we need to make sure he is safe." Sarah swallowed. "You said the man is looking for a way to hurt us." Wolf nodded. "Victor, he is patient. He is smart, and he will not stop until he finds a weak spot. So, we need to make him think he found one." He pulled out a large paper map. It showed the neighborhood around the kindergarten, the diner, her street, the garage. Markers in different colors dotted the map, connecting lines between buildings. "Here is the plan," Wolf said. He pointed to the kindergarten. "Tomorrow afternoon we pretend to slip up. We make it look like Leo's protection disappears for 1 hour. No riders at the school, no truck outside, no eyes on the playground, just Sarah and Leo walking home alone. Sarah felt her stomach drop. "You want me to put my son in danger?" "No," Wolf said. His voice was soft but firm. "We want Victor to think you are in danger, so he shows himself. We will have men hidden everywhere. On rooftops, in cars, in the delivery van down the street. He will not get within 50 feet of Leo. But he will think he can." He tapped the map. "When he moves, we move. The police are with us on this. They are ready. We just need him to show his face where we can see him." Sarah looked at the map. She saw the tiny lines, the markers, the careful planning. She saw the hours of work these men had put into keeping her son safe. "Why me?" she whispered. Wolf set down his hand. "Because you are the one person Victor will not suspect. A mother walking her son home from school. That is the most normal thing in the world. He will not see it as a trap. He will see it as his chance." Sarah took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I will do it." Wolf looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Tommy loved you," he said. "He told me once that you were the bravest person he ever knew. He was right." Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. She looked at the map, at the plan, at the men who had become her protectors, and for the first time all day, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. Chapter 11. A mother's fear. Sarah drove home that night, with her hands shaking on the wheel. The garage lights faded behind her. The plan played over and over in her mind like a song she could not stop. By the time she reached her little house, her heart was pounding. She walked in quietly. Leo was asleep on the couch, wrapped in his favorite blue blanket. His small chest rose and fell. His lips were parted, and his face looked peaceful. He did not know about the danger. He did not know that a man wanted to hurt him. Sarah sat on the coffee table and watched her son breathe. And then the fear came. It came like cold water, filling her chest, making it hard to think. She could not do this. She could not walk her son down that street while a monster waited. What if something went wrong? What if the riders were too far? What if the police came too late? She grabbed her phone and called Wolf. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah, are you okay?" "No," she said. Her voice cracked. "I got home, and I looked at Leo, and I thought about tomorrow. And I can't do it, Wolf. I can't use my son as bait." There was a long pause. Then Wolf said, "I am coming over." 20 minutes later, his motorcycle rumbled up her street. He knocked softly. She opened the door, still in her coat. They stood in the small kitchen. Sarah's hands were wrapped around a cold cup of coffee she had not drunk. "I know this looks scary," Wolf said, "and I know the thought of it makes your stomach hurt. I have seen men shake before a fight. It is the same fear. It means you love him." "I love him more than anything," Sarah said. "That is why I can't risk him." Wolf leaned against the counter. His voice was calm and low. "Sarah, listen to me. We are not sending Leo into danger. We are building a trap. Every single angel will be hidden around him. I will be in the delivery van across the street. Bones will be in the bakery. Hawk will be on the roof of the library. Diesel will be in the school, dressed as a janitor." He paused. "There will be 12 men on that block. 12 men who will lay down their lives before anyone touches that boy. We just need Victor to believe he has a chance. That is all. He will never get close." Sarah bit her lip. "But what if he is smarter than you think?" "Then we will be smarter," Wolf said. "We know his patterns. We know his anger. He wants revenge. And a man who wants revenge makes mistakes. We are going to let him make his." Sarah closed her eyes. She saw Leo's face in the dark of her mind. She saw his smile. She saw the way he laughed when she tickled him. She thought about Tommy, about the way he used to hold her hand and tell her everything would be all right. She opened her eyes. "Promise me," she said. "Promise me he will be safe." Wolf looked at her. His eyes were steady. "I promise," he said. "On my brother's name, on my own life, Leo will be safe." Sarah let out a breath she had been holding for a long time. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Wolf left a few minutes later. Sarah locked the door. Then she walked to Leo's room and sat in the chair beside his bed. The room was soft and dark. Leo wore his pajamas with the little rocket ships. He held onto his stuffed bear. His breathing was slow and even. Sarah did not sleep. She stayed awake all night. She watched his chest rise and fall. She listened to the sounds of the house. She watched the window, the door, the shadows. She told herself that the plan would work. She told herself that Wolf was a man of his word. But her heart stayed on guard, like a soldier standing watch. At dawn, the sky turned pink. Sarah rose, stiff and tired. She needed coffee. She needed the warmth of the sun. She opened the front door to check the morning. And there, on the doorstep, lay a small leather vest. It was brand new. The leather was soft and dark. Gold stitching ran along the edges, and on the back, in beautiful letters, was a patch that read, "Little Angel." Sarah picked it up. It was the perfect size for a boy of 5. She ran her fingers over the stitching. On the front was a tiny patch of wings, as if made for the gentle child who would wear it. Her eyes filled with tears, not from fear this time, from warmth. She held the vest to her chest for a moment. Then she turned and walked back to Leo's room. He was waking up. His eyes blinked open. He saw her and smiled. "Mommy?" he said. "What's that?" Sarah knelt beside the bed and showed him the vest. "Something special," she said softly. "Something for you." Leo sat up and touched the patch. "Little Angel," he read slowly. He looked at her. "Is that me?" Sarah pulled him into a hug. "Yes, baby," she said. "That is you." Morning came soft and golden. Sarah had not slept, but she did not feel tired. Her heart was full of a strange humming energy, like a wire about to sing. She woke Leo gently. His eyes fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was the little leather vest folded at the foot of his bed. "Today is my birthday," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Is it really?" Sarah laughed and kissed his forehead. "It is really." She helped him into the vest. It fit him perfectly. The leather hugged his small shoulders, and the wings patch sat right over his heart. Leo looked down at himself and grinned. "I look like Daddy," he said. "Like in the pictures." Sarah's throat tightened. She swallowed the lump and smiled. "You do, baby, you really do." She made him pancakes with chocolate chips. She let him pour the syrup. She let him make a mess. Today, the mess did not matter. Today, only the joy mattered. At 10 o'clock, they got in the car. Leo wore his vest. Sarah wore a blue dress she had not worn in years. It was her best dress, the one she saved for special days. Today was the most special day of all. As they drove toward the garage, Sarah's hands were steady. She had decided to trust Wolf. She had decided to believe in the men who promised to protect her son. But still, her eyes kept checking the rearview mirror. She watched every car. She watched every shadow. And then, they turned the corner. Leo gasped. The garage lot was full of motorcycles. Row after row of shiny chrome and black leather. There had to be 200 of them, maybe more. They lined the street like a river of steel. "Oh wow," Leo whispered. "Oh wow, Mommy." Sarah parked the car. She helped Leo out. And the moment his little feet touched the pavement, the big garage door rolled open. Inside, the garage had been transformed. Streamers hung from the ceiling in blue and gold. Balloons floated in bunches, bobbing gently under the lights. In the corner sat a bouncy castle, bright and colorful, with a slide on the side. A long table was covered with presents wrapped in shiny paper. And at the center of it all stood a giant birthday cake. It was 3 tiers tall, covered in white frosting and blue stars. On top sat 5 glowing candles. They flickered like tiny flames of hope. Leo's mouth fell open. He turned in a slow circle, trying to take it all in. "Is this for me?" he asked. "Is all of this for me?" Wolf walked over. He was wearing his leather cut, polished and clean. His beard looked freshly trimmed. His eyes were soft. "All of it, little man," he said. "Happy birthday." Leo ran to him and hugged his legs. Wolf knelt down and lifted him easily, setting the boy on his shoulders. Leo laughed and held onto Wolf's head like it was the best ride in the world. Sarah stood in the doorway and watched. Her heart ached, but not from sorrow. It ached from the overwhelming weight of being loved. Bones came over with a plate of hot dogs. Hawk stood nearby, watching the crowd with his dark eyes. Diesel talked in a low voice into his sleeve. The men were everywhere, big and tough and covered in patches, but each one took a moment to look at Leo and smile. Big Jim sat in a chair near the cake. He was dressed in a clean white shirt. His face looked bright and rested. He waved at Sarah, and she walked over and squeezed his hand. "You look good, Jim," she said. "I slept like a baby," he said with a wink. "Had the best meal of my life last night. Paid for by a kind woman with a good heart." Sarah shook her head. "You bought me coffee the next morning. We are even." Big Jim laughed. "Not even close, darlin'. Not even close." The party went on. Leo jumped in the bouncy castle. He opened presents. He got a remote control car, a superhero cape, and a brand new pair of sneakers that lit up when he stepped. He wore the cape over his vest and declared himself the Little Angel Avenger. Sarah took pictures. She laughed. She let herself feel the joy. And then it was time for the cake. Wolf lifted Leo onto a stool. The 200 bikers gathered around in a wide circle. Big Jim stood slowly, leaning on his cane for support. He smiled and held up his hand. Everyone went quiet. "Today," Big Jim said, his voice rough with age, "we celebrate a boy. A boy who carries the name of a hero. A boy who has a mother with the biggest heart in this town." He looked at Sarah. She felt her eyes sting. "We are grateful," Big Jim continued, "to be part of this family." Wolf stepped forward and lit the candles. They flickered bright against the dark garage. And then the song began. 200 deep voices rose together. They sang Happy Birthday with a boom that shook the walls. The sound filled the garage like thunder, but it was a gentle thunder, a storm of love. Leo's eyes went wide. He looked at all the big men singing for him. He looked at his mother, and he smiled the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. "Happy birthday, dear Leo," they sang. Happy birthday to you. Leo closed his eyes and made a wish. He blew out the candles in one breath. The bikers cheered. They clapped and stomped and whistled. Wolf hoisted Leo into the air, and the little boy laughed with pure joy. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth. The tears came. She cried because she was happy. She cried because she was grateful. And she cried because, deep in her chest, a cold knot of terror still sat there. The danger had not passed. The plan was still ahead. But right now, in this moment, her son was safe. Her son was happy. Her son was loved. She whispered to the sky, "Tommy, look at him. Look at what you gave me." And for a moment, she felt him there, not as a ghost, but as a warmth. A hand on her shoulder. A whispered promise. She dried her eyes and stepped forward to join her son. The music came from somewhere. A little speaker set up near the cake table. Someone had plugged in a phone and started a playlist of old rock songs. The garage hummed with noise and laughter. 5 minutes later, the bouncy castle sagged under the weight of 3 grown men. They had climbed in to retrieve a lost shoe. The shoe belonged to a little girl whose mother was a friend of a friend. The men were very sorry. They were also having the time of their lives. Leo pulled on Sarah's sleeve. "Mommy, can I ride the bike now?" Sarah looked at Wolf. Wolf raised one eyebrow. His father's idea of a safe speed was 60 in a school zone. "I think he is ready." Sarah laughed. "Fine, but you stay on the seat and you hold on." They walked to the front of the garage. A brand new Harley stood there. It was not the biggest bike, but it was the shiniest. The chrome sparkled under the fluorescent lights. Wolf swung Leo up onto the seat in front of him. "Hold on to me, buddy." Leo wrapped his arms around Wolf's middle. Wolf squeezed the throttle. The engine let out a soft, happy roar. It was not mean, it was joyful. The bikers parted like a wave. Wolf rolled the bike forward at a crawl. He turned in a wide circle. He went down the center of the garage and back. Leo threw his head back and howled with laughter. "Faster." He yelled. Wolf shook his head. "Your mom would kill me." "Please, Uncle Wolf?" Still no. They did 3 more laps. Leo waved to every single biker by name. "Hi, Bones. Hi, Hawk. Hi, Diesel." He remembered every name. He had only met them this morning. Sarah leaned against the wall and watched. Her chest felt tight and warm. She had not felt this light in 2 years. The knot in her back had loosened. Her eyes kept finding Leo, but he was fine. He was safe. He was happy. The gifts came next. They piled up on the long table. A remote-controlled dinosaur. A robot that shot foam discs. A book about trucks. A hand-knitted blanket from a woman named Gretchen who ran the local bakery. A bag of new clothes with the tags still on them. "Which ones fit?" Someone whispered. "I got the blue and the gray." Leo opened every gift with wide eyes and a loud thank you. He did not stop to put them down. He just sat in the middle of the pile like a king on a throne. Sarah snapped pictures. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. Another buzz. Then another. She looked at the screen. Her stomach dropped. Her boss. The diner manager. "Sarah, you there? Could you come in tonight? Small issue." She typed back with her thumb. "Busy birthday party. What's up?" The reply came fast. Too fast. "Health inspector came this morning. Food storage violation. They are threatening a fine." Sarah's hands went cold. She put the phone in her pocket. She took a breath. She put on a smile. "Leo, come and try the cake." Uncle Wolf said there are filling flavors. Later she would handle it. Later she would call. Right now her son was happy. The party rolled on, the cake was cut. The bouncy castle was evacuated and then reoccupied by 3 grown men and a determined 5-year-old. The sun passed its peak and started its long slide down. Sarah took out her phone again. She just wanted to check. She would not stay long. Another text had arrived while she was not looking. Sarah, then a pause. Then, you need to see this. She frowned. Her fingers shook as she tapped the message. It was a photo, a close-up of a label on a container. There was a small tear in the plastic, a drop of jam. Or was it strawberry juice? A second photo arrived, a close-up of a form with red stamps across the bottom. Then, a third message. This one was not a photo. It was just a few simple words. Don't come in tomorrow. Clean out your locker by noon. Sarah stumbles outside the garage. Her legs feel like jelly. She holds Leo close to her chest. The heavy door swings shut behind her. The music and laughter inside fade to a dull hum. She gasps for air. Her hands shake. Her phone feels like poison in her pocket. Mommy? What is wrong? Leo squirms. He wraps his arms around her neck. Nothing, baby. Mommy just needs some air. She sinks down against the brick wall. The sun is warm on her face. She looks down at her son. He is safe. He is happy. His 5th birthday party is a dream come true. So why is everything falling apart? Her breath comes in short huffs. Her chest feels tight. A single tear slides down her cheek, then another. Soon she is crying. Silent tears roll down her face. She presses her lips to the top of Leo's head. She lifts her eyes to the sky and blinks. She will not fall apart. Not here. Not now. She just needs a minute. That is when she sees it. A glint of light. Across the street, behind the big oak tree. A man. Her blood turns to ice. She freezes. He is half hidden in the shadows. Tall, wearing a dark jacket. His face is hard to make out, but she can see his hands raised to his eyes. Raised like a camera, raised like binoculars. Her heart slams against her ribs. Then the man steps into the light. A shaft of golden sun catches his face. And she sees it. A long, ugly scar running from his temple down to his jaw. Her whole world tilts. No, it's him. It has to be him. The man Wolf warned her about. The one who ruined everything. The reason her son needs a guard. The one who took everything from her, twice over. The memories flash in her mind. Tommy's smile. Wolf's words. He is out. He wants to hurt you. He wants to hurt me. He will use Leo. But the man does not move. He just stands there, watching her, waiting for her to fall apart. His hands hold the binoculars steady. He does not melt into the shadows. He does not look away. He is not threatening her, not with words, but his gaze pins her to the spot like a moth to a board. Her son squirms in her arms. He looks a question at her. Mommy? Leo's voice is small and worried. Why is that man staring? The whole world narrows to a single point. She opens her mouth. No sound comes out. Her eyes stay locked on the man. He knows she is here. He knows she is alone. He knows everything. She clutches Leo tight. She looks for a place to run, to hide. The garage door is too heavy. The street is too empty. She is a deer in headlights, and her baby is in her arms. The man lifts his hand. He holds up one finger, like he is saying, 1 minute. A final joke. Then he turns. His long coat flickers behind him. He steps into the narrow alley and vanishes. Gone. The street is empty. The only sign anyone was there at all is the rustle of a dry leaf skittering across the pavement where he stood. Sarah does not exhale. She cannot. She just sits in the growing silence, holding her son, her whole world turned upside down, wondering when the ground will finally catch her fall. The back office of the garage smelled like old leather and motor oil. A single lamp cast a warm circle of light on the cluttered desk. Sarah sat in a creaky chair, Leo asleep in her lap. His little chest rose and fell in a peaceful rhythm. She wished she could feel that calm. Wolf leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Big Jim sat across from her, his old hands folded on his knees. The silence was heavy, but not unkind. Sarah took a shaky breath. The diner called. The health inspector found something wrong. They said I have to go. I do not have a job anymore. She said the words flat, like she was reading a grocery list. But her voice cracked on the last word. Wolf did not move. His face stayed calm. He looked at her with those steady eyes. We will fix this. Sarah shook her head. You cannot fix this, Wolf. This is my life. My job. My insurance. Leo's asthma medicine. I cannot just wait around for a miracle. Big Jim leaned forward. His voice was soft and rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. Child, sometimes miracles need a little time to put on their boots. Wolf pushed off the wall. He walked to the desk and sat on the edge. He looked down at Leo, then at Sarah. I know you are scared. I know you feel like the walls are closing in. But I am asking you for one thing. What? Wait one day. Just one day. Do not make any big decisions. Do not run. Do not give up. Let us handle this. Sarah stared at him. Her throat felt tight. Why? Why do you keep doing this for me? Wolf's jaw tightened. He looked away for a moment. Then he met her eyes again. Because Tommy would have done the same for me. And because you are family now, whether you like it or not. Big Jim nodded slowly. Family does not let family fall. Sarah wanted to believe them. She really did. But the fear was too loud. The doubt was too heavy. She looked down at Leo's sleeping face. His little fingers curled around her shirt. Okay, she whispered. One day. But the word felt like a lie. Later that night, Sarah sat on the floor of her tiny apartment. The lights were off. The only sound was the hum of the old refrigerator. Leo was tucked into bed in the next room. She could hear his soft breathing through the thin wall. She stared at the open closet. A small duffel bag sat on the floor in front of her. She had not packed anything yet, but her hands were already shaking. She thought about Wolf's words. Wait one day. But what would one day change? The job was gone. The money was almost gone. The danger was real. That man with the scar had found them. He had stood across the street and watched her like she was prey. She could not put Leo through this. She could not keep leaning on people who had already given so much. They had their own lives, their own problems. She was just a waitress, a single mother, a burden. She stood up. Her legs felt weak. She walked to the closet and pulled out a few of Leo's shirts. She folded them slowly. Her hands moved on their own. Maybe they could go to the shelter in the next town. Just for a little while. Just until she found a new job. A new start, somewhere far from the danger, far from the memories, far from the pain. She picked up Leo's favorite teddy bear, the one with the missing eye. She held it to her chest and closed her eyes. I am sorry, baby, she whispered into the dark. Mommy is trying. Mommy is trying so hard." A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. She wiped them away with the back of her hand. She could not fall apart, not yet. She had to be strong. For him. She packed another shirt, then a pair of pants. The bag was small. It would not hold much, but it would have to be enough. She looked around the tiny apartment. The cracked walls, the worn carpet, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. This was all she had, and now she was leaving it behind. Her phone buzzed on the floor. She glanced at a message from Wolf. "Trust me." One day. Please, she stared at the words. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She wanted to type something back, something angry, something scared, something honest. But she did not know what to say. She set the phone down. She picked up another shirt. And she kept packing. Dawn came slow and gray. A soft knock on the door made Sarah freeze. She was on her knees, zipping the duffel bag shut. Leo was still asleep in his room. She had planned to wake him in an hour and slip out before the sun got too bright. She opened the door, a crack. Big Jim stood there. His worn leather jacket looked heavy on his old shoulders. His eyes found the bag at her feet before they found her face. "Morning, child," he said. His voice was gentle. Sarah tried to smile. It did not work. "Jim, it is early. Could not sleep. Had a feeling I should come by." He nodded at the bag. "Looks like you were planning a trip." Sarah looked down at the duffel bag. Her hands felt cold. "I have to go, Jim. I cannot stay here. I cannot keep putting Leo in danger. That man with the scar. He found us. He watched the garage. What if he comes back? What if he hurts my boy?" She hugged her arms. Her voice shook. "I know you all mean well. Wolf means well. But I cannot accept this. I cannot be the reason someone else gets hurt. I need to take Leo somewhere safe. Somewhere quiet. Start over." Big Jim did not move. He just looked at her with those old, kind eyes. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He walked to the kitchen table and sat down. He motioned for her to sit across from him. Sarah hesitated, but her legs were tired. Her heart was heavier than her body. She sat. Jim folded his hands on the table. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Sarah, I have lived a long time. I have seen good men fall and bad men rise. I have seen families break and families heal. And I have learned one thing above all else." "What?" "When a person carries their burdens alone, the weight only gets heavier. But when they let others help, the load becomes light enough to carry." Sarah shook her head. "I am not your burden, Jim. I am not your responsibility." Jim smiled. It was a soft smile, worn by years. "That is where you are wrong, child. You became our responsibility the moment you fed an old man with your last $10 and a slice of pie. That kind of kindness. It does not go unnoticed. And it does not go unpaid." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. That was nothing. Anyone would have done it. "No," Jim said quietly. "Not anyone. I have been on this earth for 70 years. I know what most people would do. They would walk past an old man counting pennies. They would not even see him. But you saw me. You gave me a meal. You gave me dignity." He paused. "You gave me hope." Sarah looked down at her hands. She did not know what to say. Jim leaned forward. His voice dropped to a serious tone. "Now, about that man with the scar. I came here to tell you something. Something important." Sarah looked up. Her heart pounded. "Sarah, that man is not who you think he is." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I saw him watching the garage. Wolf said he was the one who killed Tommy. He wanted revenge. Jim shook his head slowly. No, child. That man is a police detective. His name is Marcus. He has been working undercover with our club for months. He has been helping us take down the real criminal, the man who actually set up the ambush that killed Tommy. Sarah's breath caught. Her head spun. But the scar. Wolf said what he had to say to keep you safe. He did not want you to know the truth until we were sure. But Victor, the real threat, he has been hiding nearby. He was the one who got out of prison. He has been planning his revenge against Wolf and the club. And he wanted to hurt someone close to us. Jim paused. His eyes were steady. The detective at the garage. He was there on purpose. He wanted Victor to see him, to believe the club was distracted, to believe we were unprotected. That was the bait. Sarah's mind raced. Bait? You used my son as bait? Jim reached across the table. He took her trembling hand. No, child. We used the detective as bait. Leo was never in real danger. Marcus was always close. And so were we. The entire club was watching. We would never let anything happen to that little boy. Never. Sarah stared at him. Her chest felt tight. So the man with the scar, he was protecting us? Jim nodded. He has been watching over you from the very beginning. He was the one who tipped us off when Victor started moving. He helped us plan everything. And now, the trap is ready. Sarah swallowed hard. Trap? Jim's old eyes glinted. Victor believes the club is weak. He believes we are distracted by a party and a crying waitress. He believes he can strike, and when he does, Marcus and the police will be waiting. Along with 200 of the most loyal brothers you will ever meet. Sarah sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. But not from fear anymore. Something else was rising in her chest. Something warm. Jim, she whispered, why did you not tell me sooner? Because we needed you to act like a scared mother. We needed your fear to be real. And it was. He squeezed her hand gently. I am sorry we put you through that. But we had to protect you. And we had to catch a monster. Sarah looked at the duffel bag on the floor. Then she looked at Jim. His old face was full of kindness and truth. So I do not have to run? Jim smiled. No, child, you do not have to run. You have a family now. And family stays. Family fights together. And family wins together. Sarah sat in the kitchen chair, her mind spinning like a wheel in mud. The duffel bag sat on the floor like a forgotten promise. She looked at Big Jim, and a new thought crept into her head. Jim, she said slowly, the health inspector, the violation, the firing, was that real? Big Jim let out a long breath. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. No, child, it was not real. Sarah's heart dropped. What do you mean? That complaint was filed by a man named Victor. He is the one who killed Tommy. He is the one who has been hunting Wolf all these years. And when he got out of prison, he did not just want revenge on the club. He wanted to break you. Break me? Jim nodded. He watched you. He knew you were struggling. He knew you were barely holding things together. So he filed a false complaint with the health inspector. He wanted you to lose your job. He wanted you to lose your insurance. He wanted you to feel so desperate and so scared that you would pack up your son and run. Sarah's hands curled into fists on her lap. He wanted me to leave. So I would be alone. Yes, away from the club. Away from Wolf. Away from protection. He knew he could not get to you here. Not with 200 brothers watching every corner. But if you ran, if you went to some shelter in another town, you would be easy pickings. Sarah felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had almost done it. She had almost walked right into his trap. But the diner owner, she said. He fired me. He said the violation was serious. Jim smiled. The diner owner is an old friend of the club. He has known Wolf since he was a boy. When Victor filed that complaint, the owner called us immediately. We told him to play along. We told him to fire you, to make it look real, to make Victor believe his plan was working. Sarah stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Every step of the way, Jim said gently, we were one step ahead of him. We needed him to believe he was winning. We needed him to feel bold, to feel confident, so he would make a mistake. Sarah thought about the party at the garage, the shiny Harley, Leo's face lighting up, the tiny leather vest that said Little Angel, and then the text from the diner owner. The panic, the fear, it had all been part of the plan. But she had not known. You used my fear, she said softly. Not angry, just honest. Jim's face softened. We used your fear to protect you. I know that sounds strange, but a scared mother does things she would never do otherwise. Victor needed to see that fear. He needed to believe you were weak. And you gave him that performance without even knowing it. Sarah sat in silence for a long moment. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall. Leo stirred in his room, a small sound of sleep. She looked at the duffel bag again. It felt different now, like a mistake sitting there, like a lie she had almost believed. I was so scared, she whispered. I did not know who to trust. I did not know what was real. Jim reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm. I know, child, and I am sorry we could not tell you the truth. But we needed you to be real. We needed Victor to believe you were alone and afraid. Because the moment he believes that, the moment he moves, we will catch him. Sarah looked at the old man. His eyes were kind. His face was tired. But there was something steady in him. Something she had not felt in a long time. Safety. She looked at the duffel bag one more time. Then she stood up. She walked over to it, bent down, and unzipped it. She pulled out Leo's favorite blanket, his small toy truck, a photo of Tommy in his vest. She placed them back on the shelf. Then she zipped the bag shut and pushed it into the closet. She turned to face Big Jim. Her chin lifted, her shoulders straightened. The fear that had been sitting in her chest all morning began to fade, not all at once, but enough. She walked back to the table and sat down across from him. Jim, she said. Her voice was steady now. Clear. I do not want to run anymore. I do not want to hide. That man took my husband. He tried to take my job. He tried to scare me into leaving my home. She looked at the old man with fresh eyes, eyes that were no longer afraid. I want to help you catch him. Big Jim looked at her. For a long moment he just studied her face. Then a slow smile spread across his worn features. Are you sure, child? It will not be easy. It will be dangerous. Sarah nodded. I know, but I am done being scared. I am done running. Tommy did not run, and neither will I. She leaned forward and looked Big Jim straight in the eye. I want to help you catch him. I am not afraid anymore. The morning air was cold and gray. Sarah stood beside a beat-up sedan that smelled like old coffee and motor oil. The car belonged to the club. It was plain, boring, perfect for what they needed. Wolf stood in front of her, his big arms crossed over his chest, His beard was thick, and his eyes were hard. But when he looked at Sarah, they softened. "You remember the plan?" he asked. Sarah nodded. Her hands were shaking, but she pressed them flat against her jeans. "I drive the back road toward Miller's Creek. I stop at the gas station near the old bridge. I wait there for 10 minutes. If no one shows up, I come back." "That's right. And if someone does show up?" Wolf's jaw tightened. "Then you stay calm. You do not get out of the car. You do not roll down the window. You just keep your hands on the wheel and let us handle the rest." Sarah looked at the road ahead. It stretched out like a long gray ribbon, disappearing into the trees. Somewhere out there, a man was waiting. A man who wanted to hurt her. A man who had killed her husband, but she was not afraid. Not anymore. Detective Marcus stepped forward. He wore a plain jacket and carried a small black bag. In his hand was a tiny device, no bigger than a button. "This is your wire," he said. "I am going to hide it in the collar of your jacket. If anyone talks to you, we will hear everything. Wolf and his men will be close. They will be hidden in the trees along the road. They will see you the whole time." Sarah turned around. Marcus clipped the small device inside her collar. It was light. She could barely feel it. "Say something," Marcus said. "Test, test. Can you hear me?" A voice crackled in her ear, loud and clear. Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Big Jim walked up to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. His old fingers were bony but warm. "You are brave, child," he said. "Braver than most men I have known. Tommy would be proud." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She looked down at the ground for a moment. Then she lifted her chin and looked at all of them. Wolf, Big Jim. The detective. The rows of bikers standing by their motorcycles, ready to move the moment she needed them. "I am ready," she said. Wolf reached out and squeezed her hand. "You are not alone out there. Remember that. Even when you cannot see us, we are there." Sarah got into the car. The seat was worn. The steering wheel was warm from the morning sun. She adjusted the rearview mirror and looked at herself. Her face was pale. Her eyes were tired. But there was something new in them. Something that had not been there before. Strength. She started the engine. It rumbled to life with a low growl. She put the car in gear and pulled away from the garage. Behind her, she saw the bikers in her mirror. They did not move. They just watched her go. She drove down the quiet street, past the diner, past the school, past the small park where she used to push Leo on the swings. The town looked different today, like it was holding its breath. The road turned, and the houses fell away. Trees rose up on both sides, tall and dark and still. The sky was overcast. A thin layer of clouds covered the sun. Sarah checked her mirror. Empty. She drove for 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 15. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Her breathing was slow and even. She thought about Leo. About his laugh. About the way he said "mama" in the morning, his voice still thick with sleep. She thought about Tommy. About the way he used to kiss her forehead before he left for a ride. She thought about all the reasons she wanted to live. And then she saw the lights. Headlights in her rearview mirror. A black van. It had been following her since the city limits, keeping a safe distance. But now, it was closer. Much closer. Sarah's heart raced. Her palms went slick on the steering wheel. But she kept her hands steady. She took a breath. Slow, even, she kept driving. The van's headlights flooded her rear window with white light. Then the horn blared. Long and loud. It cut through the quiet morning like a knife. Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. She checked her mirror again. The van was inches from her bumper now. The driver revved the engine. It was a clear message. Pull over. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at the road ahead. It curved through the trees with no turnoff. No gas station. No way out. She took a breath. Slow, even, she flicked on her blinker and pulled onto the gravel shoulder. The van followed, blocking her in. The engine died. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the van door opened. He came at her fast, a big man with a scarred face and eyes full of fire. He moved like a man who had nothing to lose, like a man who had waited a long time for this moment. Victor. He stormed up to her window and slammed his fist on the glass. Sarah flinched but did not scream, "Get out." He yelled. His voice was like gravel. "Get out of the car." Sarah shook her head. She forced herself to meet his eyes. They were wild. Unstable, but there was something else there too. Something she had not expected. Fear. He was afraid. "Get out." He screamed again. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. It gleamed dully in the gray light. He pressed it to the window. "I will not say it again." Sarah's mouth went dry. She heard the wire in her collar crackle. Wolf's voice, calm and steady. "Sarah, he won't hurt you. Trust me." She did not know how. She did not know why. But she believed him. Victor's face twisted with rage. "Fine. Stay in there. I will shoot the tires and tow you to where we need to go." He took a step back. He raised the gun. And then he heard it. A low rumble. Like distant thunder. It grew louder, louder, until the ground itself seemed to shake with it. Victor froze. His eyes went wide. "No," he whispered. "No. No, the trees came alive. They poured out from between the trunks. Dark shapes moving like ghosts. They came over the hills in waves, from behind rocks, from under tarps that had been there all along. One by one, the headlights flicked on. Then, the engines roared. 200 motorcycles. 200 Hell's Angels. They moved in perfect formation, flanking the road, circling the van from every direction. They moved without a sound but for the thunder of their bikes. It was a wall of leather and steel. Victor stumbled backward. His gun swung wildly from side to side. "Stay back. I will shoot. I will." The ring of bikes closed in. Tighter and tighter still. There was no gap, no way out. And then, as one, they cut their engines. Silence in the quiet. A single pair of boots crunched on the gravel. Slow, steady, deliberate, Wolf stepped out of the trees. He held a shotgun across his chest. His eyes were fixed on Victor. He did not look at Sarah. Not yet. He walked right up to the van. He pressed the barrel of the shotgun against the metal grill. It made a soft clink, louder than a gunshot. Victor's hands were shaking. The gun in his hand trembled. "You want to know a secret?" Wolf said. His voice was calm, low, filled with a quiet kind of peace that came from knowing exactly how the story ended. "I ain't mad at you, Victor. I feel sorry for you." Victor blinked. What? Wolf smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "You had a choice. You had 100 chances to walk away. To let it go. But you could not let it go. And now? Now you get to live with the consequences." Victor stared at him, then at the wall of bikers around him, then at Sarah. She was out of the car now, standing on shaky legs. Her hands were wrapped around her arms. "I am sorry," Victor whispered. It was not clear who he was talking to. "Drop it," Wolf said. Victor did not move. "Drop it," Wolf said again, "or this ends badly for you. And we both know you are the only one bleeding." Victor let out a bark of nervous laughter. Then the gun slipped from his fingers. It hit the dirt with a muffled thud. Wolf said, his voice turning to ice, "You messed with the wrong family." The driver's side door of the van creaked open. Detective Marcus stepped out. His badge were gone, replaced by a set of handcuffs in his hand. He walked over to Victor and grabbed his wrists. "Victor Volkov," he said, snapping the cuffs on. "You have the right to remain silent." Behind them, the sun broke through the clouds. The sound of 200 bikers cheering rose into the air. Sarah let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Wolf turned to her. His face was soft again. "You okay?" Sarah looked at him, at the man in his black leather vest, at the family of riders surrounding her. "Waiting," she smiled. "I think I am getting there." The sirens came first. 2 police cruisers and an unmarked sedan rolled down the highway, their lights painting the trees in red and blue. Officers spilled out. They took Victor by the arms. He did not fight. The fight had left him. All that remained was a hollow man in handcuffs. Detective Marcus nodded to Wolf. "Good work, all of you." He turned to Sarah. "You are very brave." Sarah tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her legs gave way. She reached for the car door, but her fingers missed. The world tilted. Strong arms caught her. Wolf's arms. They held her steady like she weighed nothing. His leather vest pressed against her cheek. It smelled like oil and road and old cigarettes, but under all of that, there was something warm. Something safe. "It is over," he said. His voice was low and rumbling. "It is done." Sarah's shoulders shook. The tears came fast and hot. All the fear she had held inside for weeks poured out at once. She cried for Tommy, for Leo, for the little apartment with the broken heater and the empty fridge. For every night she had lain awake, wondering if she could do this alone. Wolf did not let go. Around them, the bikers stood in a loose circle. No one spoke. They just watched. Some took off their sunglasses. A few bowed their heads. One of them, a big man with a gray beard, walked over and placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You did good, miss." Sarah looked up. She saw 40 faces, then 100, then 200. All of them looking at her with something she did not expect. "Respect, I could not have done it without you," she whispered. Wolf shook his head. "You were the one who got in the car. You were the one who stayed calm. We just happened to be waiting." She let out a wet laugh. "Waiting? How long were you waiting?" Wolf's mouth twitched. "About 45 minutes. Big Jim insisted we leave early. Said he did not trust a man like Victor to be on time." Laughter rippled through the crowd. It broke the tension. Some of the bikers clapped each other on the back. Others lit cigarettes and let out long, relieved breaths. Sarah pulled back from Wolf. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is Leo okay?" "He is fine," Wolf said. "His first ride in a sidecar. He threw up twice. Said it was awesome." A sob turned into a laugh. Sarah covered her mouth. "That is my boy." The rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the morning air. A little dirt bike came rolling up the hill. On it sat Big Jim, his white hair wild in the wind. In front of him, wearing a tiny helmet and a leather vest that read Little Angel, sat Leo. "Mommy." Sarah ran. She did not care that her legs were shaking. She did not care that her heart was still racing. She reached the bike and scooped Leo into her arms. He was warm and solid and real. She buried her face in his hair. "I missed you, buddy," she whispered. "I saw the police," Leo said, bouncing with excitement, "and Uncle Wolf waved at me through the walkie-talkie and said to be brave, and I was so brave, Mommy, I did not even cry when I threw up." Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. She looked over Leo's shoulder at Big Jim. He smiled at her with his weathered face. "Told you we would keep him safe," he said. "You did," she said. "You really did." The sun rose higher. Golden light spilled across the highway. The bikers began to pack up. They folded tarps and strapped gear to their bikes. The police cruisers pulled away, taking Victor with them. Sarah held Leo tight. She walked back to Wolf, who was leaning against his bike. His arms were crossed. He looked at her with that quiet, steady gaze. "I have something to tell you," he said. Sarah's chest tightened. "What is it?" "Your job." She blinked. "My job? The one I lost? The one where they fired me over a false complaint?" Wolf nodded slowly. "The diner owner. His name is Frank. He is not just a diner owner. He has been a friend of the club for 30 years. When we told him what happened, he filed that complaint with us. It was part of the plan to draw Victor out." Sarah stared at him. You got me fired?" "We got you temporarily unemployed," Wolf said, a hint of a smile showing. "Frank will rehire you tomorrow, with back pay. And a raise." Sarah could not believe it. A raise? A good one, plus a week off to rest. "He said to tell you that your pie crust has always been the best in town, and he would rather close the diner than lose you." Sarah looked down at Leo, then up at Wolf, then at the 200 bikers who had shown up for a woman they barely knew. "Why?" she asked. "Why do all of this for me?" Wolf put his hand on her shoulder. His hand was big and warm and heavy. "Because you are family, Sarah. You have been family since the day you married Tommy. And family takes care of each other." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. So she just nodded and held Leo tighter. The sun was fully up now. The highway glowed gold. And Sarah felt, for the first time in a long time, that everything was going to be okay. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon and fresh pie. Sarah stood outside the glass door, holding Leo's hand. Her other hand clutched the strap of her purse like it was a lifeline. Wolf stood beside her. He had cleaned up for the occasion. His beard was combed, his vest was brushed. He still looked like a mountain in leather, but a kind mountain. "You ready?" he asked. Sarah took a deep breath. "I do not know." "Mommy," Leo said, tugging her sleeve, "why are we just standing here? I want pancakes." She laughed. It came out shaky. "Okay, buddy, okay." She pushed the door open. A little bell chimed above her head. The diner was full. Every booth, every stool. The regulars were there. The truck drivers. The old ladies who came every Tuesday for the meatloaf special. And in the back corner, 4 bikers sat in a booth, drinking coffee and eating eggs. They nodded at Wolf. He nodded back. Sarah felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. Her cheeks went warm. She wanted to turn around and leave, but Leo pulled her forward, pointing at the menu taped to the counter. "Look, Mommy, they have chocolate chip pancakes." "Indeed we do," said a voice from the kitchen. Mr. Henderson stepped out. He was a thin man with gray hair and glasses that always slipped down his nose. He wore a white apron stained with gravy. In his hands he held a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Sarah," he said, Please, sit down. She hesitated. Mr. Henderson, I am so sorry about the health inspection. I do not know what happened. I clean that kitchen every night, I promise. He held up a hand. Stop, please sit. They slid into the booth by the window. Leo climbed onto the seat and immediately reached for a packet of sugar. Wolf sat beside Sarah, his big frame making the bench creak. Mr. Henderson sat across from them. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he put them back on, his eyes were watery. Sarah, I owe you an apology, a big one. The health inspection was a hoax. A false complaint filed by a man named Victor. Sarah's breath caught. Victor? Yes, he wanted to hurt you. He knew you were connected to Wolf. He filed fake complaints with the city. He wanted you to lose your job so you would be alone and scared. She felt a cold chill run down her spine. So you fired me because of him? No, Mr. Henderson said firmly. I fired you because he threatened my daughter. He said if I did not fire you, he would hurt her. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Oh no. Is she okay? She is fine. The police kept her safe. She is home now, scared but safe. He slid a brown paper box across the table. This is for you. Sarah looked at the box. What is it? Open it. Her fingers trembled as she untied the string. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a brand new employee name badge. It was shiny and gold. It read, Sarah Lead Server, and underneath the badge was a stack of cash. $2,000, Mr. Henderson said. Back pay for every shift you missed, plus hazard pay, because you were brave enough to stand up to a bad man, plus a bonus for being the best server I have ever had. Sarah stared at the money, then at the badge, then at Mr. Henderson. I do not understand, she whispered. You fired me. I made a mistake. Bad men make good people do bad things. I am sorry. He reached across the table and patted her hand. Your job is waiting for you. You can start tomorrow. With a raise. A raise? $3 more an hour. Plus Sundays off. Paid. Sarah felt the tears building. She had been so scared, so sure that her life was falling apart. And now the pieces were coming back together, stronger than before. Thank you, she said. Her voice cracked. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. He smiled. Do not thank me. You earned it. Now, will you have some breakfast? Leo tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, can I get the chocolate chip pancakes? Anything you want, buddy, anything you want. Wolf leaned over and whispered, Maybe not anything. The chocolate chips are extra. Sarah laughed. A real laugh. One that came from her belly. Then we can afford it. They ordered pancakes, bacon, orange juice. Coffee. The diner hummed with happy noise. The regulars who had heard the news came up to congratulate Sarah. Some shook her hand. A few hugged her. An old woman with blue hair and thick glasses pressed a folded bill into Sarah's palm. For the boy, she said. Buy him a baseball glove. Sarah tried to give it back, but the woman was already gone. Leo, sticky with syrup, looked around the diner. He saw the 4 bikers in the corner. He saw Wolf beside him. He saw all the smiling faces. Mommy, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Do you know how many uncles I have now? Sarah smiled. How many? Leo held up both hands, then added 3 fingers. Then frowned, counting again. 200. I have 200 uncles. The diner went quiet for half a second. Then someone laughed. Then someone else clapped. Then the whole place erupted in happy cheers. The old ladies wiped their eyes. The truck drivers grinned. The bikers in the corner raised their coffee cups. Mr. Henderson came out from the kitchen with a huge pancake stack decorated with a candle. "Happy belated birthday, little man," he announced. Leo's eyes went wide. He jumped in his seat. "Is that for me?" "It is for you. With extra whipped cream." Sarah looked at the crowd. At her son, at Wolf, who was trying to hide a smile behind his beard, and she thought of Tommy. She thought of how he used to say that the world was full of good people. You just had to look hard enough. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "You were right, Tommy. You were right." The diner sang. Sarah cried happy tears. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly surrounded by family. The garage smelled like oil and gasoline and old leather. But today, someone had hung strings of white lights from the ceiling. Someone had swept the concrete floor. And someone had set up a long table with folders and papers laid out in neat rows. Sarah stood at the entrance, holding Leo's hand. She wore her best dress, the blue one with the little white flowers. Leo wore a tiny vest over his shirt. It had the word "Little Angel" stitched across the back in gold thread. "What is all this?" she asked. Wolf smiled. It was a small smile, hidden mostly by his beard. But she saw it. "A meeting," he said. "A special one." Inside, the garage was full. Bikers sat on chairs and on motorcycle seats. Some leaned against the walls. All of them wore clean vests. All of them were quiet. Big Jim sat at the front of the room. He was wearing a suit jacket over his club vest. It looked strange and wonderful at the same time. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm like honey. "Come sit." She walked forward, Leo close behind her. The crowd parted to let them through. Someone had put a folding chair at the very front. It had a cushion on it, a red cushion with gold tassels. Leo pointed at it. "That is a fancy chair, Mommy." "It sure is, buddy." She sat down. Leo climbed onto her lap. Wolf stood beside her like a guard. Big Jim cleared his throat. He picked up a stack of papers from the table. "Sarah, when you fed an old man a hot meal with your last $10, you did not know who he was. You did not know that he was my father. You did not know that he was the founding president of this club." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. He looked hungry. "That was all." Big Jim nodded. "That was everything. Because in this world, most people look away. You looked at him. You saw him, and you gave." The room was silent. Even the lights seemed to hum softer. "Tommy was our brother," Big Jim continued. "He gave his life for one of us, for Wolf, and through Wolf, for all of us. We have carried that debt for 2 years. We have carried it like a stone in our hearts." Wolf shifted beside her. She saw his jaw tighten. "We tried to pay it back," Big Jim said. "We paid your rent. Quietly, we kept the boss from firing you. Quietly, but we never told you, because that was not the way we wanted you to find out." He held up a folder. It was thick, heavy with pages. "Then you fed my father. And we understood something. You are not a debt. You are family, and family shares everything." He handed the folder to Sarah. She took it. Her hands were shaking. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." She opened the folder. The first page was a legal document with gold seals and fancy letters. She did not understand most of the words. But she understood the ones that mattered. Trust fund, education, medical care, 20 years. She looked up at Big Jim. "This is for Leo?" "For 20 years, he said. "Every single writer in this chapter put in money. Some put in a lot. Some put in what they could. But everyone put in something. We opened accounts. We hired lawyers. We made it legal and official." Wolf spoke for the first time. His voice was low and rough. His school, his medicine, his asthma treatments, all covered. If he wants to go to college, that is covered too. If he wants to start a business, there is money for that. Sarah could not breathe. She looked down at the papers again. Her eyes moved over the words, over the numbers, over the signatures, and then she saw it. At the very top of the page, in bold letters, in loving memory of Tommy. Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. A sound came out of her mouth, half laugh, half sob. She could not hold it back. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She pressed the folder to her chest and rocked, crying into the pages, crying for Tommy, crying for everything she had lost and everything she had gained. The garage was silent. No one moved. Wolf knelt down beside her. He put one big hand on her shoulder. His palm was warm and steady. "This is what real family does," he said. Sarah looked up at him. Through her tears, she saw his own eyes were wet. She saw the love there, plain and honest as daylight. "Thank you," she whispered. He shook his head. "No thank you, for raising his son, for being brave, for staying in this fight." Leo reached over and patted Wolf's cheek. "Do not cry, Uncle Wolf," he said. "You can share my pancakes." The room broke into laughter. The heavy silence lifted. Sarah laughed too, even as the tears kept coming. She looked down at the papers in her hands, at the name of her husband, at the promise of a future for her son. And for the first time since Tommy died, she felt like everything was going to be okay. The diner looked different today. Balloons floated up to the ceiling, red and blue and yellow and green. Streamers hung from the counter. Someone had put a big banner over the register. It read "Happy Birthday, Leo" in huge gold letters. And the cake. Sarah had never seen a cake like it. It sat on the main counter, right where the pies usually lived. It was 3 layers tall, white frosting with chocolate swirls. On top stood 5 candles shaped like tiny motorcycles. 5 candles. For 5 years old. The door jingled. A Hell's Angel walked in wearing his usual leather vest. But on the front, right over his heart, was a patch. A small white circle with a smiley face on it. "Morning, Sarah," he said. "Where is the birthday boy?" Still sleeping. He was up too late. Too excited. More bikers filed in. Each one wore the same patch. The white, smiley face. They filled every seat in the diner, every booth, every stool at the counter. Some had to stand against the wall. But no one complained. No one even frowned. Wolf came in last. He carried a small box wrapped in blue paper. "Tiny present," he said. Sarah shook her head. "You did too much already. The trust fund. The party. This cake." "There is no such thing as too much for family," Wolf said. She walked to the back room. Leo was curled up on the little cot she kept for him. His brown hair stuck up in every direction. "Leo, wake up, buddy." He blinked. "Mommy? There is a surprise for you. Is it a pancake party?" "Better." She carried him through the kitchen door. The moment Leo saw the room, his eyes went wide. "Mommy," he whispered, "there are 100 uncles here." 200, Wolf said. "But who is counting?" Leo giggled. Sarah set him down. He stood in the middle of the diner, turning in a slow circle. He pointed at the balloons, at the streamers, at the banner with his name. Then he saw the cake. "Mommy, there are motorcycles on my cake. Motorcycle-shaped candles," she said. Wolf ordered them special. Leo ran to the counter. Wolf lifted him up and set him next to the cake. Sarah lit the 5 candles. The whole diner went quiet. 200 bikers in leather vests with smiley face patches leaned forward. "Make it a good wish, little man," Big Jim called from his booth. Leo closed his eyes, his face scrunched up in concentration. Then, he opened his eyes and blew. All 5 candles went out. The diner erupted. "Hooray!" 200 voices shouted together. The windows rattled. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. She leaned against the counter, holding her chest. Big Jim cut the first slice. He gave it to Leo. Leo grabbed it with both hands and took a huge bite. Frosting smeared on his cheeks and nose. "Cake is good," he announced. Everyone laughed. The diner filled with the happy sound of forks and plates. Sarah served coffee. The bikers passed pie and milk and orange soda. It was loud. It was messy. It was the best birthday Sarah had ever seen. Later, when the cake was gone and the balloons floated lower, Leo slipped off his chair. He ran across the diner. He ran straight to Wolf. Wolf was standing by the door, talking to Big Jim. He did not see the little boy coming. Leo slammed into his leg and wrapped both tiny arms around it. "Uncle Wolf," Leo said. His voice was muffled against the leather. "You are the best uncle ever." Wolf froze. For a moment, the tough biker did not move. Then he bent down. He lifted Leo up and held him close. Leo wrapped his arms around Wolf's neck. Wolf's eyes glistened. A single tear rolled down his cheek and disappeared into his beard. He blinked, trying to hide it. But Sarah saw. She stood behind the counter, a cup of coffee in her hand. She watched Wolf hold her son. She watched 200 bikers watch them, all smiling, all nodding. She looked up at the ceiling, at the little silver light fixture, at the sky beyond the roof. "Tommy," she whispered. "You sent me angels. Angels in leather." The diner was quiet now. Sarah stood by the register and counted the tips. $50, $40 for the bills. She smiled. It had been a good day. A very good day. Customers had been kind. The pie case ran empty by 2 o'clock. Even the old man in booth 4, the one who never smiled, had left her $1 and a nod. She tucked the cash into her apron and looked around. The lights hummed softly. The coffee machine was clean. The counters were wiped. She liked this time of night, when the world got quiet and she could breathe. Leo's cot was empty. He was outside already, pressing his nose to the big glass window. She could see his little silhouette. And behind him, glowing golden under the streetlight, were motorcycles. Many motorcycles. Sarah unlocked the door and stepped outside. The cool air touched her cheeks. She had expected a quiet walk home. Instead, she found a family. 200 Hells Angels sat on their bikes in front of the diner. Their headlights painted the street in gold. Their leather vests were full of patches that told stories, and every single one of them wore the little white smiley face patch near the shoulder. Big Jim sat up front, close to the door. His bike was low and wide. His silver beard moved like a flag in the wind. Wolf was in the middle of it all. His tall figure looked warm in the light. He had no helmets today. Both of them were in his hand, one big and one small. The small one had stars, and the big one had stars too. "Mommy," Leo cried, "we are going on a ride." Uncle Wolf said. Sarah walked closer. She touched Wolf's bike. There, bolted to the side, was a glossy sidecar. It was painted the same blue as Tommy's old bandana. The little seat inside was soft and covered, and next to the seat there was a tiny bell. "Nothing but the best for the boy," Wolf said. tears pinched behind Sarah's eyes. It was beautiful. But she looked at the motorcycle and felt a little scared. "I don't know if I can ride in that," she said softly. "You can," Wolf said. "Tommy talked about you every time. He said you were the bravest person he ever knew." Sarah swallowed. She stepped closer, and Wolf reached out and set the helmet on her head. It was warm and snug, and stars scattered across the top. "Leo first," she said. Wolf pointed to his own bike. Another sidecar was attached. It was leather, patched, with a sticker of a puppy and the words "Little Angel" written in white paint. Leo jumped in with a mighty hop. "Hooray!" he shouted. Big Jim wheeled onto the main road first, roaring his ride. His headlight caught the wide pink and purple sky. The sunset was streaking behind the dust. "All right," Wolf yelled. "Let's roll." With a roar, Wolf's bike pulled forward. The other 200 machines followed in a slow wave. Engines roared like thunder rolling a storm. The road moved beneath their wheels. Sarah's had a little trouble climbing into her own sidecar. A biker named Tinker gave her a hand. She felt wobbling, then she settled down, and the wind touched her cheeks. The shakes and the roof. The streets went by. The houses went by. Her little apartment came and went, and she didn't feel sad. She didn't feel scared. She just felt the rhythm of the engines. It sang a song. It sang like another voice she remembered. "Tommy." She looked up. The sky was on fire with orange and gold. In the distance, the horizon opened warm. Like an invitation. Like a welcome. Leo was riding in front of her. She could see his little helmet, bobbing and swinging as he whispered to Wolf. Wolf laughed and lifted one hand from the handlebars to point at something in the sky. A bird or a cloud. Sarah looked up too. The sunset opened above them, covering them in a blanket of glowing color. "Thank you, Tommy," she said softly. Her voice was gentle and sweet. Her tears fell, but they were not sad tears. They were warm tears. The kind of tears that a person cries when something heavy gets lifted off their chest. She leaned her head back. She smiled at the sky. She had a job. She had a son. She had money for his school and his medicine. She had 200 protectors, and a big old man named Jim who brought them pie with his sugars. She had Wolf, who never looked at her with pity, who looked at her like a sister, who knew she was family. Sarah rested her hand on the edge of her sidecar. The wind tied her fingers. The whole world smelled like fresh air and leather, like safety. She knew it now. The truth settled into her heart. Quiet. She was safe. Leo was safe. They were loved. And they would never face the night alone again. The motorcycles roared down the road, 200 strong. The late golden light stretched their long shadows behind them like a line of them. And ahead, the home welcome glow. Sarah looked at the sky one more time. She placed her hand over her heart. "Thank you, Tommy. I promise I will be okay." The road stretched ahead. The sun painted everything in gold. Sarah closed her eyes, not from sleep, but from joy. On the hill, a moment later, the bright light of the setting sun heard. And the last thing she heard was the fading roar of 200 engines, growing quieter and softer, until it disappeared into the horizon like a song that never stops if you let it play. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.